All right, so this is going to be my submission for the 9th assignment for Fundamentals of Game Engine Design. And this assignment was all about frustum culling. And for my submission, I created a frustum culling system that is tied to the camera's location in the game world, and one that is not tied to the camera's location. So we'll start with the camera one. If you hit B for this, it activates it, and you'll see that when we're looking at these, they are still there, as one would expect. But if we turn to the right, you'll see that we'll be getting some printouts that some objects have been culled. And that's really the only way to tell that they are being, cut off, because they're already off the screen, so we can't really see them anyway. But for that, it just was a printout and setting them to not be visible for the world object. And if we look back over, they're back again. You'll see that they're being re-enabled. So that's about it for that. We'll go ahead and disable it by pressing B. And for the second part, I created another frustum object that has some visible lines to it and some edges to it, so we can see what happens when an object enters or leaves this frustum. So we'll go ahead and go inside it, and you'll see that the back face of this is already being culled a little bit by the frustum culling that already is built into Afterburner. So with space, we have these same projectiles that I've been using for the little shooter game. So we'll go ahead and launch one, and we'll move to the edge of the frustum, and we'll watch it as it goes through. All right, and you'll see that once it did go ahead and leave the frustum's area, it got culled as expected. And this happens on all of the sides, as the test just checks each face individually and sees if they're all outside one of them. And this is essentially how frustum works when you're moving the camera around. So it's pretty neat. So if we actually go ahead and look, when we disable this, if you hit B again, N again, it will re-enable all of the objects that are outside the frustum. So if we disable it, we'll see that these guys do reappear, because now we don't have any frustum culling. So just to go over a little bit how I was able to actually make this work, was I took an already existing class, the GLView class, which already had calculations that would calculate what a view frustum would look like. I converted this other class from drawing lines into using triangle fans. And I use the same calculations to calculate the vertex locations. And then I go through and calculate indices that are needed in order to draw the triangle fans correctly. So once I already have all of those vertices and indices calculated out, I just use the shader GL shader default indexed geometry lines to draw those vertices correctly, because that shader uses triangle fans rather than lines to draw. So it will already handle all the colors and drawing the actual triangles, as long as I pass the indices correctly. Well, that's it. So I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time.